customers' needs are and be able to meet those needs in a proactive way and doing it in a cost-effective manner.
Make sure that your car is away from any obstacles, mailboxes, basketball goals, or cars. The arm is very unforgiving and it can damage anything that it is reached around. Routes start at 6 a.m. and we could be anywhere at any point of the route at 6 o'clock. So we advise all customers to make sure their cars are out by 6 a.m. Any trash day that is assigned to you, whether it be Monday through Friday, we will be there even on the holidays.
Whether you're shopping, dining, or doing business in Stillwater, we'd like to take the opportunity to let you know about public parking in 3 areas around Stillwater: downtown Stillwater, Campus Corner, and the Strip on Washington Street. In these areas, many of the free parking spots, mostly in the streets, are timed. Times range from 30 minutes to 3 hours, Monday through Friday, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. These spaces are not timed on weekends and city-recognized holidays. The purpose for these timed parking spots is to give everyone equal opportunity to a parking space, which is not only good for people visiting these areas, but is a benefit to the businesses in these areas as well. Now, say for instance you're cited for overtime parking while you're in a business. Instead of paying the $20 citation, you can bring it back to one of the more than 200 businesses in these 3 areas to have the ticket validated. All you have to do is give them the ticket, and that's it. They'll take care of the rest. For more information about the Public Parking Space Validation Program or tickets, call the Municipal Court at the City of Stillwater, 405-742-8255, or go to stillwater.org.
Hi Stillwater, my name is Rob Hill and I'm the Emergency Management Director for the City of Stillwater. When a natural disaster occurs that causes structural damage to your home, shutting some of your utilities off may help keep you and your family safe and may prevent further damage to your home. In an event that you need to do this, the City of Stillwater wants you to know why it would be good to shut a utility service off, as well as how to do it and when the best time is to shut it off.
Your typical water meter that needs to be accessed by the water department will be a little bit larger than a customer valve side. And we'll talk about customer valve sides really quick. The water meter that needs to be addressed by the water department is larger, black in color, and actually takes a special key to unlock. It turns and then pulls off. In an instant that you do not have a customer side valve, you will need to call the water department to have this locking lid removed to turn the water off. On the other side, you can also request a customer valve from the City of Stillwater. There is no cost to the customer whatsoever. You can go to any of your local hardware stores and purchase a tool similar to this. This tool has a U-shaped end on it that you can stick down in here, and you can locate the customer side valve and turn it a quarter turn clockwise to turn your water off, and then turn it back a quarter turn to turn your water back on. There's one other option that you can have, and that's just to make sure that you have a master valve in your house. And we'll go inside and see if this house that we're at does have a master valve. And as we can see here, this home does have a
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the February 26th, 2019 meeting of the Stillwater Planning Commission. By the way, we'd like to also thank everyone in attendance tonight, and it's good to see everyone come out for this agenda, and luckily our weather decided to oblige us this week. And please know that we will be calling for speakers speaking for and against each measure at that time. So, and also we did get packets of information, and all of the correspondence was forwarded to us by our very efficient clerk. So let us start right now with the first item of business. We have consent docket. These are the items that are routine administrative matters that may be approved either by single vote, with or without discussion. And if an item needs to be pulled from the consent calendar, it can be pulled by a planning commissioner for individual discussion and/or action. So, excuse me. The Planning Commission will take the action at this meeting. We have just the one item. It is Trade-In Development LLC Final Plat, PZ 172227, requesting review and approval of a final plat for a portion of property addressed as 4299 West Prescott Drive, also known as Trade-In Heights Estates, Section 3 in the RSS, Residential Single Family Small Lot Zoning District, in order to create 81 residential lots. Do I have any questions or motions at this time?
I move accept findings and recommend City Council approve the proposed final plat as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, the motion stands. We will now vote. And the motion passes 4 yes, 1 absentee. The motion carries. All right, and item 3, we do not have any consent items removed, so we will now go on to item 4, public hearings. The Planning Commission will hear public comments, discuss and take action at this meeting, including a vote or a series of votes on each item listed under public hearings unless otherwise indicated. Our first item, A, is St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, form-based code warrant, FBC 19-01, requesting review and approval of a warrant in the form-based code district to allow a new parking lot consisting of 32 spaces at property addressed 504 West 3rd Avenue in the FBC's T6 district. And we have staff's report.
Yes, thank you. Lance Gross with Development Services. The form-based code warrant before you is for St. Andrew's Episcopal Church located at 504 West 3rd Avenue. The rectangle, the black rectangle on the screen is the location of the site where they actually plan on constructing a new surface parking lot. And like you had mentioned, it is zoned T6. T6 is located to the north, to the south, and also to the west. T5 is located to the east, which is a lower density zoning. And to kind of give you a little orientation, the fire station over here, the campus fire station is right over here. Knobloch is over here, and West Street is right over here. This is a view looking to the northwest. The white building is the location of the proposed surface parking lot. This is looking to the northeast. Third is on the left-hand side of the photo, and there's an alley on the, I'm sorry, third is the right-hand side, and there's an alley on the left-hand side. This is the proposed surface parking lot. It's a 32-space parking lot, and they plan on actually putting in a wrought iron fence, decorative wrought iron fence with brick columns around the edge. They plan on having a one-way, single-lane entrance off of West, and the exit will be through the alley. The first warrant request is basically to allow the parking to be placed on the entire lot. The form-based code ordinance only allows parking within the third layer, and this is the third layer right here on this graphic. The first and second layer, the proposed parking lot would cover that as well, and that's the actual first warrant. The second warrant would include access into the parking lot. The ordinance states that access can only be taken from the rear of the property, and they plan on actually taking it from West Street. And the final warrant would be for the use of a surface parking lot. A surface parking lot is not allowed in the T6 district without a warrant approved by the Planning Commission. And the findings, the design changes require a warrant. Parking is not allowed to front onto 3rd Avenue, only onto the third layer. Access to the parking lot from the rear for the site is not feasible. And the use warrant is for a parking lot is required. Any questions?
Do you know if they switch to the third layer only version of parking on this lot, if they had built it in that way, how many spaces would they lose?
That's a good question. That's probably a good question for the applicant.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's looked into that or not.
Sure. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will now open the public hearing. All right. So anyone wishing, we're going to call for people wishing to speak in favor, people wishing to speak against, and then neutral. Keep in mind with the large group, in an effort to keep the meeting on track, we're going to ask that you stay focused on the item. And if someone has already covered your item and you wish to, you can simply say, I agree with so-and-so, la-da-da-da-da. Okay. If points, in other words, if points have already been made, let's try to keep moving on until all the issues have been addressed. We do not have a time limit at this meeting, but if things start running long, I may ask for people to wrap up their ideas if it gets to that. But I'm sure it won't, because this is Oklahoma. And it's been in my experience here, we've been very civil, and I don't see any sheriffs present like back when I was in California we had to have. So I'm sure everything will go great. So, and when you come up, please state your name and address so we know your perspective. All right, so with that said, anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come up and give your name and address for the record.
Roger Gose, 113 East 8th, for Gose and Associates. Sorry, I got this handed to me 5 minutes ago. I'll try to answer your questions. If not, we may need to table it. There's a letter in your packet to Mr. Gross, and it states in Article 4, Section 4.4.2.4, there's a discussion about the access, and the intent is to access the parking lot off the alley, but have a discharge onto 3rd Street, because if the parking lot was full and a car got in there, the only way they could get out would be to back to the alley, because there's no room to turn around. So we need an exit out of the parking lot to 3rd. I know that may be hard to control, but that's the only way they exit. It's a very narrow drive. It's only 10 feet wide.
The drawing shows something different than that.
Okay. Well, I mean, help me, Mike.
As I interpret the drawing has a one-way entrance off of West Street, and then the exit is on the alley, which gets you the most parking spaces and has a entrance and an exit.
Put up the site.
So
Go ahead. I don't know how to get there.
Isn't that what he was saying?
he was saying to come off
There we go, the site.
3rd Street.
Can it be
and then
zoomed?
exit on West.
I'm sorry, exit on West. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Enter from the alley, exit onto West. Did I say 3rd?
No.
You're sorry. It's West Street.
They said you didn't say 3rd. I heard 3rd. I'm in agreement.
We're going to go out to the east.
Okay.
Again?
On West.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does that clear that part up?
It clears that part.
Otherwise, we'd request that you approve this, recommend to the City Council to approve the warrant. Is there anything else? Thank you.
All right. Next speaker, this is in favor of the item. All right, seeing none, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the item? Please step up. No. All right. Seeing none, neutral, anyone neutral? If not, we will now close the public hearing and hear staff alternatives.
Okay. Let's see, your alternatives are to accept the findings and approve the warrant request as presented. You can accept the findings and approve the proposed warrants with amendments, or you can find that the warrants are not appropriate and deny the request, or you can find that additional information is needed and table the discussion to a future date.
Thank you. All right.
I move, accept findings, and recommend the City Council approve the warrant request as presented.
Second.
Right, we have a motion. And with one abstaining, the motion passes with 4 votes yes. All right. Next item on the agenda is Homestead Harvest LLC, specific use permit, SUP 19-01, requesting review and approval of a specific use permit to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at property address 114 West 8th Avenue in the Commercial Business District, CB District. Sorry, did I? Oh, the motion was in, yeah, okay.
My motion was to approve all the warrants.
Should we revote?
Yes.
Yes. Well, okay.
Yes.
To clarify, the motion that carried was to approve all 3 warrants on the prior item. All right. Sorry, we were, yeah. All right, so we are now on item B, Homestead Harvest LLC.
Yes, the specific use permit before you is for a medical marijuana dispensary located at 114 West 8th Avenue. The hatch mark indicates the location of the proposed dispensary, and it's currently zoned CB, commercial business, and commercial business surrounds this the site entirely. Main Street is located on the right side of the map, and 8th Avenue is right on the south. This is a view looking straight north. It's the former American Red Cross building, and it's right adjacent to the alley. And the findings are the Oklahoma state law allows for medical marijuana facilities. A specific use permit is required for a medical marijuana dispensary, and the existing on-street parking can accommodate the use. State license has been issued to the applicant. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
All right, we will now open the public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the item, please step forward and give your name and address.
My name is Jeremy Mullen, founder of Homestead Harvest, and here with Matt Whalen, our other partner and founder of Homestead Harvest. We would like to just say thank you for the opportunity to, speak to everyone, but more importantly, be able to have the opportunity to educate and to provide safe access to a medicine. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions for us? No question for me?
Yep. No. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this item? All right. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this item? Or neutrally? No? All right. Seeing none, we will now close the public hearing on this item and hear staff's alternatives. Well, hang on a second. Sorry, Lance. Is there any discussion or questions amongst? No. All right, Lance.
Okay. Let's see. Once again, you can accept the findings and recommend approval. You can accept the findings with modifications. You can find that the request is not appropriate and recommend denial, or you can table to a certain date.
All right, thank you.
I move we accept findings and recommend the City Council approve the proposed specific use permit as presented.
I'll second.
All right, there is a motion, and we will now vote. All right, and the motion carries 4 yeas. All right, the next item on the agenda, item C, is Cyborg Farms LLC, specific use permit SUP 19-02, requesting review and approval to establish a medical marijuana commercial indoor growing facility at property addressed as 3820 North Land Run Drive in the Industrial Light IL District. Staff's report.
Yes. The specific use permit is for our very first medical marijuana commercial grower. The hatch mark indicates the location. It's in an industrial area. It's right off of Land Run. The growers are allowed to go in industrial areas and also agricultural areas. This is a view looking to the west, northwest, and you can see it's a warehouse, basically. The applicant has no plans to put up any type of signage, and parking is adequate, and it's all an indoor growing facility. And the findings are, Oklahoma state law allows for medical marijuana facilities. A specific use permit is required for a medical marijuana commercial grower. Existing parking can accommodate the use, and the applicant has received a state license. Any questions?
Did you mention how large the square footage is inside the facility? Do we know that?
I believe it's about 35, maybe 3,600 square feet.
Okay. Just out of curiosity. All right. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you, Lance. All right. We will now open the public hearing on this item, and anyone wishing to speak in favor of the item, please step forward. Give your name and address for the record.
Address is in my home address. Is that?
If you're a resident, does he have to give his home address?
Yes. Okay. My name is Matt Muggenberg. I'm the sole owner-operator of Cyborg Farms, LLC. And again, I really have no comment other than I appreciate you guys' time and attention to this matter. Any questions? Oh, my address is 1617 North Wildwood Drive. Sorry.
Thank you.
Right. No questions. All right, seeing no questions. Anyone else wishing to speak for this item? All right, seeing none, anyone wishing to speak against or neutrally towards this item? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And is there any questions or discussion amongst? Nope. All right, we can now entertain motions. Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun there, Lance.
That's fine.
Staff will present alternatives.
Yes, you can accept the recommendations and recommend approval. You can accept the findings with conditions and recommend approval, or you can find that the request is not appropriate, or you can table it to a certain date.
I move we accept findings and recommend the City Council approve the proposed specific use permit as presented.
Second.
We have a motion. We will now vote. Did it go? All right. And the motion carries 4 yeas, 1 abstaining. Thank you. All right. And we will now go on to the next item on the agenda, item B, which is Beta Zeta Alumni Corporation, map amendment MA 19-01, requesting review and approval to rezone 159 South Redwood Drive from residential single-family small lot with Westwood overlay, RSS with Westwood overlay, to residential multifamily intermediate, RMI district. Staff presentation.
Yes, the map amendment is for 159 South Redwood Drive. The red hatch mark on the map indicates the location of the proposed development. It's currently zoned RSS, and it has an overlay of the Westwood Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District. And let's see, RTM is located to the east. RMI is located to the south. This is a view looking to the northwest of the existing house. And you'll notice there's a parking lot over here, which is also owned by the applicant and the owner of this property as well. This is looking straight to the east from Redwood Drive. And the findings: rezoning is necessary to allow a surface parking lot at this site. The subject site is RSS, and it has the Westwood Overlay District. The overlay would be removed. The overlay is required to have an RSS base. Expanding existing parking lot to the east is the proposal of the applicant. Other options may exist. Are there any questions?
I have a question. If this is rezoned and a parking lot is built here, what, if any, are the landscape requirements and access requirements under this new zoning?
I believe there are no landscape requirements.
Okay.
Correct. Access,
In other words, do they have one entrance and one exit? Do they have drive requirements? Or is it a parking lot and when we rezone it, there will be no requirements or traffic stud or anything done? They just need to get a driveway permit in there.
that is a great question. We've not seen any plans. I know that they have some ideas or some conceptual ideas, but we do not have any plans at this point. They'll have to follow, you know, what the ordinance states. They may just have, it's my understanding, they may just have access to the east, to that existing parking lot. Yeah.
But if we rezone it, nothing in the rezoning, 5 years from now, they may decide they want access at a different location, and there's nothing in the zoning or rezoning that restricts that access.
That is correct.
And if we rezone this, there's nothing in the requirements that they can't build a multi-family structure on this site in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct. All the available uses within the RMI would be permitted.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Lot, you said the lot size is about 0.19 acres. That's for the whole part, that entire lot.
Yeah, I think it's about 8,500 square feet.
Okay, just was wondering. Right, any other questions for staff? All right, thank you, Lance.
Okay, thank you.
We will now open the public hearing. So, to start off with, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the item, please step forward, give your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Kelly Harris with Keystone Engineering, located at 923 South Lowry, here representing the owners tonight. I'm just gonna pull up Lance's presentation, possibly. Pushed F5.
Do you want to go back to another?
Oh, there.
Yeah,
So Mike, just to address a couple of your questions that you had asked Lance, the city code does require landscape requirements. There's a certain point system that we would have to meet. Small shrub, large shrubs, trees, certain amount of grass would be required. Screening along the north property line would be required. It would also be allowed to be along the front property line, this curved line as well. Up to
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sir.
Hopefully.
So, a fence will be required on the north side.
Yes, a fence would be required, a screening fence.
Around the curved area, a fence is not required or required?
It's not required. One would be allowed in the front setback up to 4 foot tall. Of course, any landscape would be allowed along that as well. There are several large trees that are located between the existing sidewalk and the curb that there would be no reason to remove those. That is in the right-of-way, and so those would remain as well. As far as access, there's an existing driveway along Redwood. I know I'm not supposed to get into specifics since this is a straight rezoning request, but we are envisioning accessing this parking lot through our existing parking lot, not off of any of the University or Redwood drives.
My concern as a planning commissioner is when we rezone this, that you're telling me a certain thing you're going to be doing, but that doesn't restrict you from doing other things, or the land being sold and other people doing other things, and now we've rezoned it for a long time.
That is correct.
And that, as you can tell, is my concern.
Yes. Any future uses in the future would have to meet the city's driveway separation requirements. Okay, so to get to my presentation. This went to sleep again. So from a planning standpoint, the city's comprehensive plan does allow commercial or neighborhood commercial to be located within areas designated as low-density residential. It's common to see these types of uses at intersections, which this is located at an intersection. We are also requesting a zoning classification that's already common in this area. There's existing RMI zoning all along the south side of University. The existing Theta parking lot is located directly to the east of this property. It is actually partly owned by OSU. This northern portion is actually owned by OSU, and the Thetas rent those spaces from the university. I believe that's about 33 spaces. It's a little under half of the spaces that are located there. They have also leased parking spaces from 2 other fraternities in the past and continue to check with OSU about parking in the Wentz parking garage. They haven't had any availability in that area yet. OSU, the only other available parking on OSU is on the north side of campus. Under the requested RMI zoning, the permitted uses are, and these are things you have to consider, boarding house, churches, self-service facilities, multifamily, parking lot, townhome, and duplex. This is the lowest density zoning classification that the city has, that a parking lot is allowed on its own. Our other option would have been office zoning, which, as you can tell by the map, there's no other office zones in the area, so that would be what we would call a spot zoning, which the city tries not to do. Some of the emails I believe that you received were concerned about intersections inside of this overlay area. You know, I had mentioned that the neighborhood commercial uses are typically seen at intersections. If that is done, then that again would be considered spot zoning, which isn't typically done in the city of Stillwater. Our property is 0.19 acres, as you mentioned previously. So under the RMI zoning, that would allow for 5 units to be constructed on this site. In 0.19 acres, with this odd-shaped lot, I can't imagine building anything building-wise, multifamily on this property. The current house, as it sits today, does not meet front building setbacks. It's located outside of that, so closer to the road than is allowed by code. The owners would, and as I mentioned before, the owners would like to expand their existing parking area into this property. They would take access to this expansion through their existing lot. This would provide the ability to screen the lot from the roadway. I mentioned earlier that screening would be already required along the north property line, and then landscaping is required by code. However, the owners are willing to go above and beyond what is required. We understand that the purpose of the Westwood Overlay District is to protect the residential character of the neighborhood. However, in this location, with the center island and entrance sign to the neighborhood being located north of our property, it's located over here, we believe that naturally and visually excludes this property from the neighborhood. We do not wish to start a precedence for rezoning in this area, and we don't believe that this request does. The property's location at the intersection, the location of the neighborhood sign, and the existing RMI zoning along the south side of University, we believe this lot should never have been included in the overlay to begin with. Anytime that you have zoning classifications, there's always a method to alter those. It's impossible to get boundary lines correct the first time. City staff and yourselves can attest to this. Every time we revise the zoning code, there's a host of properties that come up that don't line up with the new classification. It's the responsibility of this board, as well as City Council, to oversee those outliers. Thank you for your consideration tonight. I would like to request the ability to come back before you close the public comment period to address any topics that may come up.
We will consider that, yes. And your name again?
Kelly Harris.
Harris. Thank you, Ms. Harris. All right. I do have a question for you.
Yes.
In terms of the 0.19 acre lot, would a lot of that size have, you mentioned the entrance coming in from the existing side, would that be the only entrance exit point to that lot?
Yes. I have drawn up a sketch. I don't typically show sketches at a rezoning request, but this is their existing parking lot. University is here, University Circle, and then this is Redwood Drive. So we are showing access from their existing parking lot. Absolutely no access from the surrounding streets.
And roughly how many spaces does that end up producing?
I believe this layout is 20, and they lose 3 parking spaces inside their parking lot for the access drive.
My other question on the, when we go back to the, the map, the zoning, the map that shows the zoning, that parcel is RTM, and the rest, everything to the south and east is RMI. Would you know anything about why that was left on RTM instead of being part of the RMI?
I don't, and that's actually a very good point. RTM doesn't technically allow parking lots, standalone parking lots. So this would be an item that would have come before you, that it doesn't line up, the use doesn't line up with the zoning. I'm not sure of the history of that.
Does staff have, no, okay. It's a mystery at this point.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Any other questions for Ms. Harris? No, thank you, Ms. Harris. And all right, anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this item, please come up.
Good evening. I'm Betty Townsend, 2106 West 5th, Stillwater. I am appearing here with 1 foot on both sides of this issue because I presently reside in the Westwood neighborhood. I also grew up in the Westwood neighborhood. I actually grew up at 1215 West 3rd, moved here when I was in 3rd grade, and that was a time when that was completely residential all along that street with the exception of one fraternity annex and 2 fraternity houses. All of the area over by College Gardens were where all of my friends lived. It was all residential, beautiful old homes before there was a migration out into the outer boundaries of the Stillwater. I appear here, and I'm sure I'm a lightning rod to some extent tonight. A lot of my friends behind me wearing the green shirts, they're my friends and neighbors, so it is difficult. But I have served on the advisory board at the Kappa Alpha Theta House for 22 years, and I currently am vice president of the corporation board, and we are the ones applying for this. Now, I tell you this because when I was in the chapter house, we had 69 members residing there. No one had cars. Very few people had cars. Now we have the capacity for 95. We have reduced the capacity just in the last year in order to help accommodate a few of the parking spaces that we cannot provide. The front parking lot that we have put in has been absorbed. University Circle now has no parking on either side. Now, that may not seem a problem to anyone in the outlying areas, but for us, there's no place for alums to park when we come over, except in the College Gardens area. There's no place for the freshmen to park when they come over 2 or 3 times a week, our pledge class or our new member class, except in the existing neighborhoods, because we have no parking. We, as Kelly pointed out, we lease 33 spaces from the university, and we have our own existing parking lot. The enrollment increase, we didn't create this problem, but we're happy to have the problem in Stillwater because I'm also in business here. So it has been an economic boost for the enrollment to increase, but it also causes more stress and more density into these Greek neighborhoods and even into the college campus, as many of you know. We do provide a parking space for every resident in the Theta House. As I said, now we have 95. They all have cars. When we approached this possibility, it was brought out to us by one of my friends, Westwood Neighborhood Association, said, well, why don't you go south? Well, if we go south, we're going 6 blocks south. As a former chapter advisor, I didn't particularly like girls coming home late at night, walking distances to even get back to the house. To us, it poses somewhat of a security problem, or it does pose a security problem. Now, just to let you know, a comment I think that I kind of want to address is that it was mentioned in one of the pieces of correspondence today that it is unfortunate that the Greek community cannot work together to resolve their parking issues. Well, let me explain what we have done briefly, so you don't think that this was our first alternative. When Tom Coots was in I guess it was the development office, I met with him on 3 different occasions at the Theta House. We walked every inch of that house. We looked at parking. Can we cut into the west side by the house there? Can we put parking spaces there? Can we go around back? Can we do something with the existing driveway? Can we do additional curb cut? I said, can we make an additional curb cut over on University side into our existing parking lot and reconfigure, but we'd have to work with the university because we'd actually have to shift the angles, but we could achieve a couple of spaces that way. We looked at everything on 3 different occasions, and I kept calling him back and say, let's look at it again, let's look at it again. If we do it on the west side, we cannot guarantee that those are our parking spaces. Along the Pi Beta Phi house on 4th Street, there's extensive street parking. It is probably 99% occupied by the members of the Pi Beta Phi house. It is public parking, though. It is angled street parking. We can't guarantee that we can have that. We have 3 spaces currently on the west side of our parking of our house that staff will park in. We actually made them move and go to street parking so we could put girls in those spaces. So it's kind of an issue because we keep trying. We looked on University Circle, as you know, and that was a lot of my friends grew up in that area over there where we're talking about College Gardens and University Circle. University Circle have very few, and I don't know, there may be 2 or 3 owner-occupied homes. The rest of it is, there may be a few more than that. I can't speak to that exactly, but there are a number of rental signs. So a lot of it is rental on certain sides. The Delt occupy the frontage of it with a parking lot. We have our parking lot and then the university parking lot, and then a lot of it was purchased by the university to put parking for the access, I guess, into the residential hall area there. There's no one willing to sell us property. We've checked every possibility, at least at this time. There is one possibility, but it won't be available for a number of years. We're trying to solve the problem right now. As Kelly mentioned, we have tried, I call every year, trying to lease more space from OSU. A lot of the fraternities, when they start building new houses, then they occupy the residence halls and eat up that parking space. Wentz would be the obvious one, but there hadn't been anything available there any time that I've called. And the one solution, the one solution I've been given is across campus. That isn't really a solution for us that far away. It's not that they wouldn't be willing to walk. It's just a security issue at that point. It doesn't solve our problem. I even looked into a parking garage on that where our existing parking lot is. We don't have enough, there's not enough land there to have the ingress and egress from that area. It's very expensive, so we kind of abandoned that. I did talk to President Hargis again about Tower Park. As you all know, and we know what kind of issue that was several years ago, but Tower Park was under consideration that maybe it be a joint effort with the city and the university to put a parking garage there. But that was defeated. That didn't even get off ground, I don't think, to be honest. There is a possibility, because if you go south of our property, across the university, behind the Kappa Sigma house, there are two lots available, and they're not in Westwood Overlay District. They're also $1 million. That it's come down to $900,000. That's not even reasonable for us to be able to consider, to be honest. I mean, I think the reason the price is so high is they probably know that the overlay district becomes restrictive for anyone trying to secure additional parking in that area. So those are what we've done. Now, Mr. Booker, to answer your question, I'd like to address it because you are concerned, and I can understand this. And the only reason I say this, it's not that I don't know that much, but I know my brother sat on Planning Commission and City Council, so all these years I've watched them on TV and I've listened to it, and it makes me familiar with it. And I understand the concerns, I do. Because when someone says they're going to do something, then you want to make sure down the road that there aren't variances. Well, for number one, I got to be honest with you. I think at some point the city of Stillwater, which isn't really your problem here, but there is no standalone parking zoning. There is no zoning category for just a standalone parking lot. It's coupled with multifamily housing. That's one of the issues that, of course, as a resident of the neighborhood, I would be concerned about as well. I don't like having rental property. I was delighted when the overlay district came. I fully support the creation of our overlay district. I had bottles in my front yard and cracks in my little brick wall from cars and out of party houses. And that was one of the reasons that Gary Clark and Burns had, at his encouragement, decided to do that. But we're trying our best to solve a problem to get cars out of that neighborhood and to do it attractively. We're getting ready to celebrate our 100th year centennial. That house is 100 years old. Someone asked me, are you going to tear it down? No, we're not going to tear it down. If you go drive by there, I don't know if any of you have driven by there lately. Last summer, we completely stripped off the front of that house and tried to keep the architectural and historical integrity to it with the architecture that we created and the front yard. Several years ago, when we did windows, we did the same thing. We had an architect sit on staff so that we could preserve the architectural integrity of the house. Now, we're not interested in multifamily housing. We want parking space. We don't want it to look like a parking lot. I even go so far as to say in our letter to you, we'd introduce historical components, a green space, a sitting area, whatever it need. If we had to sacrifice a few spaces, we'd be willing to do that to make it creative and interesting and part of the neighborhood. But I just have to ask you individually, because I hadn't done this in a while, deep into the neighborhood. I don't know how many of you have driven into, when I say College Gardens, I'm talking about not south of University, I'm talking about the area north of University, what we used to call the rat maze when I was growing up. If you've not driven in an area, I would encourage you. there are over 44 rental signs right now. They are not as many owner-occupied. All those are south of the university. And I'd say if we redid this particular area, if we were allowed to do it, we would comply with any wishes of the neighborhood association. We would certainly comply with any ordinances, and we don't intend to ever allow this piece of property to change hands, and we would enter a covenant agreement for that. So that is all I have, and I so appreciate you all listening to us, and I hope you'll entertain. The one thing I was also going to say, the precedent, that is the biggest concern, is setting the precedent. I understand that as well. But I think that's why we have a city staff and a council, a good city staff, and the planning commission to monitor and police that. And the fact that we changed the charter to allow city commissioners on there for 12 years as opposed to the old terms gives you continuity of not allowing this to get compromised. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
No question.
All right. Any next person wishing to speak in favor of this item? Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Bria Bennett.
Can you pull the mic towards you a little bit more? Let's try to do that. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Bria Bennett. I currently reside at 2027 West Sherwood Avenue. I am a senior member of Kappa Alpha Theta, and I served as the facility director for the past year of 2017-2018. And I just wanted to come before the council today and say that in my experience, Theta, we take great pride in the areas that we claim and have our name on and making sure they have a certain appearance and aesthetic. And if we were allowed to build out into this parking lot, it would resolve not only a huge parking issue for us, but also the eyesore that this dilapidated house is causing on the corner of this neighborhood, because it has remained unoccupied for quite a bit of time since we purchased the lot in hopes of extending our parking lot. And I know, at least based on my experience and sitting at the corporation board meetings, that the aesthetic of the parking lot would be very pleasant. As you're entering that neighborhood, we would have beautiful landscaping as we do in the front yard of our house. I'm very confident in our corporation board and their ability to make sure that that is something that is an addition to the neighborhood and is in no way taking away from it. And as someone who did serve as facility director, it is quite a nightmare trying to work with Oklahoma State to get extra parking. We had a big issue last year with spaces that we had rented and not receiving the proper permits in time, and our girls being ticketed, and it took multiple months to resolve that issue. And of course, when they have tickets on their Bursar account, it has an effect on their enrollment status. And it would just really be so wonderful if we had enough parking for all the in-house members, because we take such pride in living there on campus and supporting the organization. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the item, please come up. Last call? All right. Seeing none, we will now call for speakers in opposition to the item.
Hello, my name is Julie Lambert. Mark and I live at 1824 West University Avenue, and I serve as the president of the Westwood Neighborhood Association. We speak in opposition of Beta Zeta Alumni Corp requesting to rezone 159 South Redwood Drive. Sure.
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay. Did y'all get all that, or do I need to? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Beta Zeta Alumni Corp is requesting to rezone 159 South Redwood Drive from residential single-family small lot within the Westwood Overlay District to residential multi-family intermediate district. The current specific intent of the rezoning request is to build a parking lot within the Overlay District, although RMI also allows for both boarding house, rooming house, as we've heard before. The primary purpose of Ordinance 3142 is to preserve our neighborhood of single-family homes, not parking lots. This request is clearly in conflict with the ordinance that was adopted in August of 2011. And I'd like to note that the subject property was purchased in 2015, after the overlay district was already in place. Specifically, the rezoning request conflicts with the stated purpose of Ordinance 312, Section 23.275, which reads as follows. The purpose of the Westwood Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District is to facilitate preservation of an existing single-family residential neighborhood by establishing limitations and special requirements on property uses within said area that are inconsistent with the underlying zoning and original construction thereof. It is the concern of our neighborhood that approval of this rezoning request sets a nightmarish precedent for both WNA and the City of Stillwater. We look to the FIMU parking lot on Walnut Street as an example. Walnut Street is the back side of our eastern boundary. The street was originally lined with single-family residences. However, since the issuance of a special use permit for the FIMU parking lot, the street is now lined with boarding houses with concrete parking lots for front yards. If this rezoning request is approved, it sets a precedent for similar rezoning requests within our neighborhood. Please help us keep our neighborhood intact and uphold our ordinance by denying this rezoning request. Thank you.
I actually wanted to ask you something. Mike, do you want, go ahead.
If we could restrict this property to a parking lot only that has appropriate separation between the parking lot and the residential structure and an appropriate significant landscaping around it, so it cannot ever be developed into a multifamily. It's always got to be a parking lot, and it has significant separation both from a fence, wall, and landscaping, which sets, to me, a significant precedence that this is the only place it's going to go. Are you still opposed to that? Are you willing to listen to that?
We have discussed this within the leadership of the Westwood Neighborhood Association, and we still oppose the parking lot. And the reason is because who is to say the neighbor next to this property would not come and request the same thing? And I go back exactly to the FIMU parking lot. Mark and I own a house on Walnut Street. We own the property next to the FIMU parking lot. They came and promised all of these same things, and they delivered. The parking lot is not an eyesore. However, a developer came in, used that as the precedent, and now there's our little house that's still there next to the FIMU parking lot, and the rest of the street is houses that are 7 people per house with 1 kitchen, 1 family area. Who's to say, I mean, the intentions are well there with the Thetas, but who's to say that someone won't come in and use this as their stepping stone? And we all know how important precedents are to develop or build a parking lot next to that. And then we see our boundaries start to whittle away, and then it just takes away what we've built, what we're fighting for.
I see this as a different concept than that. I see this as a irregular shaped lot that has trouble having development in it, and you have regular shaped lots north of that and all through that. So to me, it does not necessarily set a precedence.
Well, I guess that's one way of looking at it, but I see it as the bigger picture of it. It sets a precedence of the ability to apply for a rezoning and get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, ma'am, I had a couple questions. Sorry. And you may not be the one to answer this if someone else, but you covered the issues quite comprehensively. And so my question to you, or perhaps someone else who comes up to speak after you, I was wondering personally, how is the street parking in the neighborhood, not the Westwood overlay in general, but of course, I would assume the closer you get to the larger residences, shall we say, and the multi-bedroom homes.
Right.
What is the parking like there, and do you guys use any permits? Is there any kind of permit system?
No, there is no permit system that I'm aware of. Prior to the overlay district, the neighborhood was filled with parked cars. Part of the overlay district restricts, for safety reasons, parking on one side of the street, and that has made a tremendous impact on our neighborhood.
I actually drive Uber on game nights because I like knowing our students are getting home safe, and it's fun. And I've driven those areas extensively at night and seen the kids walking and you know, like told the girls, I'm not dropping you off in the middle of nowhere. I want you to be at your house so I know you're safe. I'm aware of the safety issues, but I am also aware some of those streets can be very narrow, and especially on game days when the parking can get tight. So knowing that it's half street parking only, that's good. There's probably other areas of the city that need to consider that. But all right, that helped. I just was curious. And my other question, and perhaps this might actually be, can I ask Lance a question, or should I just hold it? I wanted to ask Lance about the setback or the structure that's existing there. Just a moment.
Okay.
If the structure is existing, even if it's non-conforming in terms of permit setback is claimed, as long as they're existing use, they don't have any issues. Would the issue only pop up if they try to call a new permit or change? All right. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep you.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Next person wishing to speak in opposition.
How are you all this evening? I'm Johnny Rogers. I live at 1902 West University, and you know, I've lived in Stillwater 20 years. I came here in 1998 as a student. I'm an SAE. I pledged SAE in 1998. I walked uphill both ways in the snow because we didn't have any parking 20 years ago in the Greek neighborhood, and still don't have any parking there. I've served on the corporation board of SAE, so you know, I certainly understand you know, what Fate is trying to do, and they're trying to solve a problem that they've had for a long time. I'm also, you know, a member of the Westwood Overlay District and am supportive of what's going on there. And my issue with this really goes back to, very simply, in 2011, concessions were made to put this overlay in place, and I think we came before this body of people to get that done. And the reason the neighborhood needed an overlay is because the coding and the zoning that was put in place, you know, 50 years ago when this was a neighborhood, the one that Betty grew up in, wasn't being enforced by the city. And so you had a density issue that was taking place. You had a density issue and a parking issue, okay? And so the groups got together, the university, people from the university talked, the Westwood neighbors talked, the people that own property, all the interested parties got together and said, okay, this is the map, this is where we're gonna draw the line, and the deal on the table is we're going to give some concessions to people that have business interests in our neighborhood, and you all are going to enforce the coding going forward. So we have a clean slate going forward. Now, the beautiful thing is 8 years later, things are starting to happen in the neighborhood that are very positive. Cookouts, community involvement, Parking's gotten a lot better with parking on one side of the street. The density issue has been lessened. And the neighborhood is starting to come back to what it was designed to be. And that takes a long, long time to do. I mean, you think about what's happening in Oklahoma City around downtown. I mean, they had to do some of the things that we've done here in Stillwater. But you've got to give it time, and you've got to get enforcement for those things to take place. So, you know, this deal with the parking lot, it's a precedent issue. And we had a deal, you know, we had a deal with the city. And we shouldn't have to go back and ask for enforcement just because somebody wants to redraw the map for their own individual interest, whether it be they want a occupancy variance or a use variance for a property. To me, the conversation really needs to be shifted away from Westwood and needs to be back on the neighborhood in question, which is the Creek neighborhood. They have an issue. We have a great, great university. It's growing exponentially, and what a wonderful thing. But it's been growing, and the city and the university and the Greek corporation boards need to get together and solve their parking issue. They can do it if they work together. I know they can. There was some issue that was mentioned earlier about multi-unit parking, you know, using the Tower Park, and there's some other ideas outside the box. But whether it be restricting underclassmen to bringing a car to campus like some Big 12 universities do, there's other things that can happen that can be productive and be a long-term solution to the parking issues for the Greeks that will support not only the university and its growth, but these organizations going forward. My feeling is this is a Band-Aid on the problem for Theta. So those are the things I think you guys need to think about. If you want Westwood to be beautiful and to be a gateway to the university and the community, you've got to enforce the deal that we put together in 2011. Okay, thank you.
Next speaker.
My name is Richard Gorman. My wife Jan and I own and occupy a residence at 145 South Melrose Drive, which is north of University, and we are within 300 feet of the property that's proposed for this zoning ordinance change. We are against the change. We bought this property about 18 years ago, as many parents do, for our son to live in while he was in school. After he graduated, we kept the property and used it on a part-time basis. And in 2016, my wife and I both retired and moved back to Stillwater full-time and have occupied the property since then. We were thrilled in 2011 when the neighborhood enacted the overlay district and the associated ordinances that went with that relieved some of the parking problems and occupancy problems in the neighborhood. And since we moved in 2016 as full-time residents, we have invested additional money in our house, trying to improve it, trying to make it more livable. And we have, especially in this last year, we have seen other property owners in our immediate neighborhood are putting more money and additional money into their properties, and we see improvement. I think the proposed change is negates the purpose and the intent of the overlay district, and we are certainly opposed to it, and we would hope you vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker against.
Good evening. My name is Bob Grolman. I live at 2224 Sunset Drive, and I've lived there since 1981 and have quite an extensive set of experiences and appreciation for our neighborhood. That was lovely when we came, exciting when we came. We had wonderful neighbors of all types, owners, renters, and visitors, but we began to see in the succeeding years signs of terrible decay that I would equate to what has gone on east of the campus and south of the campus. We nearly lost Westwood, I can assure you, until the Westwood Neighborhood Association was designed and implemented. It was implemented in the best spirit of community responsibility and community reliability. We realized that we had a special historic area that deserved to remain a part of the Stillwater scene, and I'm happy to say that the measure that was approved 5-0 by the City Council has been uppermost in our minds ever since, to the point that we bear a lot of the responsibility for enforcement. It's nothing that we particularly enjoy, but it's something that was required of us when the measure was put into place. In addition to being a part of the neighborhood and having, I didn't mention, but I served as president during some of the beginning years of our organization. I'm currently the Stillwater School Board representative for that particular district, the Westwood District, Ward 5, I believe that it's called. I'm sure that all of you have seen the lovely sight of a magnificent new school going up just west of where the current Westwood School is. I will remind you that that school was chosen as one of the top 100 schools in the entire country by the federal government, and we see the opportunity for that school to attract residents back into the neighborhood and send their children in a walking neighborhood to that school. The school was designed by the architect with a view of implementing and designing the appearance of the school so that it would reflect the various aesthetic qualities of our town. And I think you'll agree they've done a magnificent job, and if not, you'll see in a few months how that has come to be. What we live are accustomed to being concerned about is, as has been stated several times already this evening, the force of precedent. You know as well as I do that there are folks out there in the city looking for ways to improve their businesses, to improve their holdings, who are just waiting for an opportunity to say, you did it once, you can do it for me. While I certainly appreciate the position that has been expressed in regard to the need for parking, I urge you to stay the course, as the phrase goes, and continue to allow the Westwood Neighborhood Association to abide by the rules that were put in place with a lot of work by a lot of people in the community, in the city, and in the Westwood neighborhood, so that we can make sure that the future remains as bright as it currently is as the neighborhood continues to evolve. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you tell me, sir, what year did the neighborhood organization form or coalesce? Is it
2011? So 2011.
Oh, okay.
But we had attempted several times through voting, other measures, to get this done, going all the way back to the early years of 2000. So we are very protective of what we've done so far, and I hope you understand why.
Oh yes, thank you. Wishing to speak in opposition. Again, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's try to keep it to new points as the evening progresses.
Yes, I won't go over everything. My name is Steve Losey. I live at 103 South Orchard. I've lived there with my wife for 25 years. South Orchard, my residence is on the corner there, Orchard and Melrose. So I won't go over everything that's been discussed already. We are against this proposal. We just feel that it's just more encroaching on the area, and especially my area, being close to campus, we're more afraid that if this gets accepted or gets approved, then other properties along that whole area, especially in the north area there, would come up for reconsideration also. So, and going back, I'm also a member of the WNA, but I'm also, some neighbors in this area started our own neighborhood association, College Gardens Association, and then we got just merged in with the WNA. So we've been concerned also for a while. So thank you.
My name is Bob Holler. I live at 2218 West 5th, and I urge the council to vote against this on the basis of what Mike Bookhart said. There's been very little planning on what they're going to do with this area. I'm fearful that, okay, they're going to have a parking thing, but they're going to go up. There may be a 5 or 6 story parking garage in there. And there's been no discussion about that. So I am urging you to vote against this.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Beckstrom. My wife and I, Nancy, live at 2218 West 4th Avenue. I'm also a former president of the Westwood Neighborhood Association. My wife's family's been in the neighborhood since the mid-1950s. She and all of her siblings went to Westwood Neighborhood. And one thing I can assure you of is that no child will attend Westwood Neighborhood that grew up in the parking lot that you're talking about building, okay? When we start turning houses in those parking lots, we are eliminating opportunities for young families to move into our neighborhood. We're turning houses into pavement. And you know as well as I do, this is all about precedence. The next property owner will come in and buy a house and do just exactly what these folks did and let it start falling apart. That is the classic gameplay for land developers in Stillwater. You buy a house, you let it start falling apart, and then you contend that you've got such an economic loss, the only way you're going to make any money is to turn it into something else. It's a dirty game, and I hate to see it played here. That's exactly what happened on this property. And to make the argument that this house does not belong in the overlay district, I find repulsive. This is a classic mid-century house. It's a wonderful, Redwood has some fabulous architecture. This house has some unique architecture. And yes, it's fallen apart, but that's because it's been neglected since it was purchased in 2015. Knowing full well it was going to be a parking lot. So I am so opposed to this. Not only does this set the precedence for rezoning and the domino effect down University, down Redwood, it also sets a horrible precedence for the future of other properties in our neighborhood. We have so many property owners that are just waiting for this to happen. We probably have 20 or 30 properties adjoining different zoning right now, and they're letting those houses fall apart. And all they're going to need is see this decision made, and they're going to be in here next week asking for the same concession, and you're going to be loath to say no to them. There's never going to be any kids grow up at this parking lot and make it to Westwood Neighborhood, which is the best school in the city and maybe one of the best in the country. It's a shame to eliminate these beautiful homes that can be family homes in our neighborhood. So we strongly oppose the rezoning of this lot.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Lambert. My wife and I, Julie, we live at 1824 West University. And I don't want to regurgitate much of what's been said this evening, except I do want to reiterate a point that we made 8 years ago, I guess, in that this neighborhood, the Westwood neighborhood, is the last residential neighborhood that borders Oklahoma State University. I'm a native of Stillwater, born here in 1962. Mr. Hargis was an enormous proponent of ours when we proposed the Westwood Overlay District. It's a very powerful tool for the community of Stillwater in the recruitment of OSU faculty to this university with the owner-occupy single-family residency environment. This particular property, when you talk about the proximity of Westwood neighborhood to Oklahoma State University, this piece of property is the very pinnacle. It's the very touching point from Oklahoma State University to Westwood neighborhood. Ms. Townsend, who I know and is a neighbor of ours, and I have much respect for her. Earlier this evening, she spoke to the importance and the likelihood that this very body and the city government of Stillwater in the future would implement and hold back future precedent. Hold it back tonight. Tonight is the night to cast your vote regarding precedent. Not the future, tonight. We encourage you to vote no on this rezoning request.
Thank you. All right.
My name is Shirley Weeks. I live at 71 University Circle. When you look at the map before, that little white line, that's my house.
Can you bring the mic closer, hon? Thanks.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that the Thetas are wonderful neighbors. I've shared the parking lot with them when they had just one parking lot. I share the lot with them now that the university owns that. Anytime I've ever called the house with any kind of an issue, it was addressed. So this is a wonderful group of women, and they're on the board, and a young group of young women. I'd hate to tell you how long I've lived on the Circle. I've lived there longer than most of you are old. I still like living on University Circle. If you had more time, I could tell you story after story of kids that did things that were unpleasant. But on the other hand, I could tell you story after story of students that have stepped forward at critical time to be wonderful neighbors. I've learned over time I need to say, you know, I won't turn you in to anybody. I'll just come over and knock on your door and say, I don't think that's neighborly. I would like for you to knock on my door and say if I'm being unneighborly. So I still think it's a desirable neighborhood. I want to talk about numerous things. I was invited to go to a Greek neighborhood meeting. I thought they were going to have a follow-up, but it was wonderfully organized, and the students that made presentations rotated around with the different groups. Each one of them, I said, do you know what? I told them how long I'd lived there. The number one problem was on University Circle when I moved there. They said, oh, what? I said, it was parking. It's always been a parking problem. I've come down here, I've been president, chairman, director of 3 neighborhood associations in that area. We've always asked for the same thing. This is a wonderful, desirable area to live in. These are wonderful old homes. My house is, I think if you all have driven down University Circle, you probably know my house. It's white, 2-story, and the yard is beautiful. I think that the reason we've come here tonight is because over time, our city has not taken seriously the preservation of older neighborhoods. We used to say, you know, like for 50 years we said, do you want to be a university surrounded by slums? Do you want to encourage everyone moving out of town and the core not be a desirable place to live? So part of this is because you as a board and the boards before you did not take preservations of neighborhoods seriously. I'm asking you to do that this evening. Listen to these people who are fighting to live in a desirable place. It's a fight all the time. I used to say to a few of them, the number of you that live here and the number of you that change, I'm not interested in your morality. I'm interested in the number of cars in the driveway. Because that meant I share a driveway with the house next door to me for many years. And the way we could get in and out was for me to explain how that would work. And 5 live there, 5 cars. That's the way it is. Now, I've come before this board not too long ago and said that there's a terrible drainage problem in this area. I recommended to you that we no longer look at Greek houses as one individual house. Each one of them along University Avenue that has been built, we build with, we save enough space between the front of the house and the sidewalk for a homecoming decoration. Everything else and a minimum of green space is converted to concrete. That has not helped the draining issues in this neighborhood. Each time the university paves more things, and there's more water that runs down University Circle. The lot on this corner has a unique and serious draining issues because the water runs behind the houses, behind my house, behind the next house, and eventually, if it was not blocked at this time, it runs onto University Avenue. Oftentimes, the drainage place isn't there. That little island will go underwater. I do not see that paving more property, and you will have to have a serious irrigation system for the water to run under the parking lot if they connect the university side to the Redwood side. So I'm asking you as a group to be a group that steps forward and say, we as a group, knowing that this is a wonderful group, that we're sorry they don't have enough places to park, but we're going to have to look at parking. And it's not just Greeks that have problems parking in the area. It's a parking area all over. We're going to have to figure out somewhere way away from campus to have cars and a 24-hour service that brings them back and forth like some other universities in our state has. So I thank you for listening, but I ask you to please step forward for the preservation of older homes in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Weeks. Well, the public hearing is still open. We've been going on for over an hour, so when I'm going to call for the next person who wishes to speak in opposition, but I would ask, please focus, if there's any new or updated items or additional information. We've heard a great, I think we've been given a very good, complete picture of the situation. So, of course, if there's anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition, please come up, or we can continue with our discussion and take action.
I'm Chris Wood. I live at 1715 West 4th Avenue in the Westwood Neighborhood Association. And I just want to address the fact on the parking lot that is east of it, that is owned by these applicants, and that it's not the wonderful gated trees everywhere. They've not really been that great of citizens with that existing parking lot, in that there's, and I've complained to the city several times, but they park all over the grass on the outside. You drive down any day, there's going to be lots and lots of cars there. So to further extend that, what I call an eyesore, is not something that I think the Planning Commission should do. So I urge you to vote no. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I'm going to close it.
Are we going to let?
Yeah. So do we want to call back, or shall we have some discussion amongst the planning commissioners with the chance to ask questions?
I'd like, the applicant requested to say something. I would like to grant the applicant to say whatever they want to at this time.
All right. Ms. Harris, or whomever you wish.
Good evening. My name is Belva Barber. I am the president of the Corporation Board for Kappa Alpha Theta. I live in Poto, Oklahoma. Graduated in an unnamed year. And I've been the president of the board for the past 8 years. I'd like to address some of the concerns that have been spoken here tonight. First of all, to thank you for your service. It's I see you and you're all paying attention. I know this is not a high-paid job for you to listen, but it's important to both sides to listen and hopefully make a decision based upon the facts. I tried to listen to both sides of this issue and listen to what I really feel is being said. And first of all, Mr.
You can call me Mike.
Mike, okay. It looks French, but...
it is German, but...
Close?
Yes, I've been called lots of things, but just call me Mike.
One of your concerns that you issued was if this was passed, what would keep us from going and, building something on it later on. This organization is the oldest fraternity, and that is a sorority. It's a fraternity on campus. We've been here since 1927. I will tell you that we have applied for this particular zoning because that is what I understand to be the one that we are, under your current structure, eligible to apply for. We have no problem whatsoever in putting it into a restrictive covenant to limit it to parking only. We have no problem in going to the district court of Payne County and having a judicial declaration that would be imposed upon this property. We mean what we say when we say it's going to be parking. And we're willing to put that in writing and back it up by court order, however you want it done. The safety of our girls is of utmost concern to us. And we have explored what we believe to be every other option available. This is something that I know there's been some discussion about the property was purchased in 2015. We have not been sitting on our haunches since 2015. We have been looking for other solutions, but when this property came up for sale, we bought it hoping that this would be a solution. Now let me explore with you what we've done. We've approached every homeowner on University Circle. There is none that we have been told would sell. In fact, I believe that I had a conversation with Ms. Weeks, and she is an absolutely delightful lady, about the possibility of later on purchasing her house. And as a very astute businesswoman, her reply was, just exactly how much money do the Thetas have? And so we weren't turned down, but she was not at that particular time interested in selling. And I appreciate every one of her concerns. But we would be 6 to 8 blocks away from parking from where we're presently situated. And that's not a good situation for young ladies to be walking at night back to the house if we could have a solution that would give them a safer approach. This property, I've heard a lot of stuff about setting a precedent. A precedent means we will always do it the way that we've done it before. But precedent is good if it preserves a purpose that needs to be preserved. But precedent is bad if it can be demonstrated to you by facts as opposed to emotions, that this would be a particular improvement, not a detriment to the neighborhood. And I point to you these facts. When they say you'll be bombarded with future requests, this is a dirty business. Everybody knows that this is the first step to the neighborhood falling apart. Every zoning request, every single one, has to pass a governing body, just like you, who determines that it's appropriate. And it's based upon the particular facts and circumstances of each request. When this overlay district was put into effect in 2011, I doubt that it was presented to the Planning Commission and the City Council at that time that never ever, in time eternal, would there ever be a situation where something needed to be changed for good cause. That's what the governing body is for. It is emotion, it is fear. A lot of times that's caused by lack of knowledge. I'm not saying that those emotions aren't valid or that they're not real, but when you look at the facts of this circumstance, what we have is an irregular shaped piece of property. It's 0.19 acres. The size of it alone, even if we weren't willing to put the restrictive covenant or the court order on it, the size of it alone is not conducive to building a high-rise parking lot, to building a multifamily structure. It's 0.19 acres. Second of all, it lies on the periphery of the overlay, the very edge of it. And Kelly has said it's a mystery to us, the present zoning that you have, but the possibility that this probably shouldn't have been included in the overlay to begin with, I don't know, but we are here today and it was included. So we'll go from that point forward. But it's on the very periphery of it. If you look at the pictures, and I have looked at those, and we've also been out there and taken some photographs, but there's a curve that runs in front of this curve, and that is not maintained by anyone. The sign for this particular community is on further west of this piece of property. It's on the very border. It conjoins our parking lot. When one of the gentlemen, I think, said that there's been very little planning that went into this request, that's incorrect. There's been a tremendous amount of planning. We have plans for landscaping. We have plans for low-level lighting. We have plans so that the ingress and egress is from our existing parking lot. It will not put any further traffic onto Redwood at all. It, in fact, will improve the fact that there will be 20 more parking spaces available to take parking off of this street than is presently there. And all of those are pluses for that neighborhood. I believe that the gentleman that addressed the parking on the grass, he said that we essentially have not been good neighbors. Our members are instructed not to park on the grass. That is illustrative of the fact that there is more parking needed in this area. That's the problem. But I will tell you that we have, as property owners, actually had people towed from our property for parking on the grass. That's an enforcement problem, and we take action and have them towed. I would ask you, I've heard about there being no more cookouts or children going to the school if the parking is paved as opposed to a house being there. If the parking is denied, then this property, I mean, we are the owners, and it can be sold. That is true. But I submit to you that if you look at the facts of this particular situation, it is a win for the neighborhood because it takes parking out off the street. It provides safety to our girls. It is an irregular shaped piece of property. We're willing to put it in writing in a court order that says that this piece of land is going to be parking only and no multi-structures on it. We're willing to do all of those things. So what I'm now hearing is, well, we're afraid that this will set a precedent in the future. But I have faith that any future requests that are made of this board would be considered by each one of you individually based upon the merits of that particular request, as opposed to a blanket fear that because you've let one rezoning request with merit be passed, that it's going to ruin the entire neighborhood. And that, gentleman, I do not believe is where you are as the governing body. So I would request you, if you're not familiar with it, you can drive by it, but we're very proud of our house. We're very proud of how we present our landscaping. We take care of our property. We have professional landscapers and professional yard people that do that, and they would take care of this area as well. We've even gone so far, we don't have any high-rise lighting. We have low-level lighting, again in consideration of the neighbors, and we will have decorative fencing around it, brick pillars consistent with the OSU, the historical neighborhood, and the historical advantage, the historical the historical nature of our house. We don't want something that is an eyesore. We want something that will beautify the neighborhood because we're the neighbor. We're right there across the street. So I thank you for your time and your attention, and I would ask you to make your decision on the merits of this case, the facts. Again, I appreciate the emotions of those people that have spoken, but I believe that we've addressed those concerns and that it is a valid request that should be considered and passed by this board. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm not inclined to reinitiate the round of opposition if we've heard, and it's fairly customary to let the representative have a last plea, and we've done that, so I would like to now close the public hearing. And I will have staff come and give alternatives, and then after that, though, I do want to give the Planning Commission members a chance to speak before we call for motions. So thank you, Lance, for bearing with us, and yes, we'll now hear the alternatives.
Let's see, you can accept the findings and recommend approval as presented, or you can accept the findings, recommend approval with conditions. You can find that the request is not appropriate and recommend denial, or you can table it to a certain date.
All right. Do we have any questions for staff?
First, I've got some questions for Lance. Is there a way to PUD or some other way that we restrict this to a parking lot only, that no access can be off the streets, that we have a significant 6-foot fence all around the residential and significant landscaping? Is there a legal way we could do that?
Yes, the PUD is a process where you could create specific guidelines and they would have to follow. It's not as common. You see it on a lot of larger type developments.
Yes, sir, I'm very familiar with that.
Yes.
So it would set a precedent that would be very difficult to do it on any other lot in this area if we have a PUD and had that restriction.
You could suggest a PUD, but you'd also have to rebid it, re-advertise it with notice.
Yeah, I mean, because the RMI zone lists parking lots and garages by right.
That is correct.
There's one point of clarification. I was just notified that PUDs have to be on at least 1 acre or larger.
Oh.
So that kicks that out.
Interesting. Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. Thank you, Lance. So comments and discussion from the commission. I'm going to start this time. And I've been a professional urban planner for over 20 years, and I have approved and proposed many zone changes in my job. And seeing this as a simple zone change, if this were a simple zone change, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it really does. It's completely understandable, the needs and the Theta's proposal to have this. It makes a lot of sense. It's fine. However, there is an overlay on this location, and to say that from a functional point of view, extending a parking lot makes functional sense. It is adjacent. However, when you look at the larger grid of the Westwood neighborhood overlay, the borders do make sense to me. This house is on the corner, but it is an existing use, so it is allowed to exist as a single-family residence. And the lines that are drawn by that overlay make sense. And sure, there are times when maps aren't perfect. I have corrected hundreds and hundreds of maps like this when you see it at this cellular level, sure. But personally, I'm not convinced that this is a place where, because this is an entrance to the neighborhood on the corner, so having this be a parking lot, it's not even an issue of, well, will they do what they promise or not? I'm not even worried about that. I mean, that issue actually doesn't even worry me. To me, the main issue is that if this is a parking lot, you have eroded an entry point corner. A problematic one. I have driven it many times late at night, in the rain, when it floods, hit that curb more than once. But nevertheless, that's a separate issue that perhaps can be resolved through, I don't know, that's not the issue before us tonight. The issue before us tonight is, should that house stand there or should it be a parking lot? And at this point, just from upholding the integrity of the overlay, I stand on that side, simply because we put it there for a reason, and we've heard many of the reasons tonight, we're aware of them. And I have been up and down Walnut quite extensively for other cases and just driving in the area, and I've seen what Walnut has become and how it is, and that is the thing that this overlay was to prevent. So it's either going to prevent it or it's not. Again, as a sensible use to adjust a boundary, it would have been fine if it were in a different location, if it weren't part of the entrance. It is a sacrifice, and it is unfortunate for the Thetas, but again, the community members have the sacrifices and many things that they've given up and had to compromise with, living next to the Greek Row and living next to a university. So it's a two-way street. It's not meant to pick one winner or one loser because you are all neighbors. But just on my personal view at this point is I feel that the integrity of the overlay should be observed in this case, and that another solution, unfortunately, needs to be found, because obviously one is needed, and I support the Thetas in wanting that solved, and this is not against them in any way. Curious to hear if any of the other commissioners wish to speak on how they see things, certainly. I mean,
I am against rezoning this property. I am not necessarily against converting this into parking with the proper screening and landscaping. But what I'm hearing is the only thing in front of this plan commission is this rezoning, which doesn't allow us to put any restrictions on it. Therefore, I'm against the rezoning.
I understand, yeah. We don't have the other instruments at our disposal in this situation.
Well, I think the Thetas make a good case for safety and security, that they would maintain the property. However, as a famous philosopher says, I feel like this is deja vu all over again. My children went to Westwood, lived on the south side of 6th, was involved in many of the conflicts and acrimony over trying to preserve neighborhood integrity in College Gardens and Westwood. There were a lot of defeats. And I was surprised in a pleasant way by the city and the residents of the neighborhood, OSU, and other stakeholders to come to an agreement with an overlay district. And I think that the success of it is exemplified by the revitalization of the neighborhood. As one person said, it takes a while, but in the past 7 or 8 years, I've seen a big difference. And I agree with that. I do see a big difference in it. And yes, there is an emotion in the argument, but people, where you live, your lived experience is a very emotional thing. But I think it's also of economic value. I think vibrant neighborhoods are of economic value to the city. And I don't want to engage in a lot of personal history, but I lived in Wichita, went to Wichita State, lived in the neighborhood just south of there, and it was a vibrant neighborhood for students and families for a long time, and then it deteriorated. And now they have the problem of how are they going to rehabilitate the area? Well, I think it can be done in Stillwater, and we've shown the way. You establish an overlay, you establish the discipline to protect that overlay. So I think it's absolutely critical we do so. Yes, having one small lot converted to a parking lot might not be the beginning of the end. But as they say, death comes by 1,000 cuts. I've seen that in the two neighborhoods we were discussing, College Gardens and Westwood. And precedent is very important in the courts and in planning decisions. So I think it's critical that we don't establish a precedent by breaking the overlay, what's been established, but protect the integrity of the overlay, protect the integrity of the neighborhoods, and protect the integrity of our city.
I see both sides of this as well. The Westwood overlay, I know you've spent many, many years putting that in place. You started long before 2011 to do that, and you did a great job. And I have seen it restore the neighborhoods. I saw it many years ago in the 90s as it started to go down, and it was kind of bleak. I understand the need for the parking lot. You know, for safety reasons, but I think when it comes down to it, if we could put something on this, if we had a particular zoning for a parking lot, that would sure solve a lot of problems, but at this time we don't have that. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. All right.
I'll make a motion. Find the map amendment is not an appropriate use for the property based upon the impacts of the surrounding vicinity, and do not recommend that the City Council approve the map amendment.
I second that motion.
All right. A motion has been made. We'll now vote. We are voting to not recommend. The motion to not recommend approval passes 4 yeses. Did we have an abstain? With one absent. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we will now continue on our agenda. Item 5 is approval of the meeting summary, the regular minutes from the prior meeting of January 15th, 2019.
I move for approval.
Second.
We will now vote. Motion passes. Sorry. Motion passes 4 yeas, 1 absence. Miscellaneous items from staff and planning commissioners and city attorney. Reminder, there was a meeting, a study session at city council last night. It was a good one. If you missed it, I recommend you go to the city's website and look at it. I normally would have spoken about it a little bit now, but given the hour, I am going to just skip right over that by saying, if you're interested in what's going to happen on 6th Street and State Highway 51, take a look. You can see everything from links on the City of Stillwater's website. And we are in the planning and discussion phases right now, so this is an excellent time to make your voices heard if you want to have a say in it. Waiting till the very end is usually less productive. All right, was there anything else from the commission members?
I move to adjourn.
The next meeting is March 5th.
Before we agree to adjourn, let's make a note that the next planning commission meeting is scheduled for March 5th of 2019, which is a week from today. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
All right. We will now vote. And the meeting is adjourned.